Welcome to the University Writing Center's presentation on creating a successful discussion board post. We will be discussing points to consider when making a discussion thread for your online class. Teachers often assign discussion board posts that require students to answer a prompt and respond to whatever media is assigned in class. The following presentation should help you double-check that you are offering a discussion board post that answers a prompt by making connections and moving the conversation forward. The first thing to take into consideration is the teacher's prompt. Often, a prompt will contain at least a few questions or concepts to consider when responding. What key concepts do you need to know to answer this prompt? Comprehensive discussion posts will provide concrete detail rather than vague concepts. For example, when responding to a prompt that asks you for your literacy experience, instead of saying, "I received a book," concrete detail provided would tell readers that your grandmother left you an old copy of Aesop's Tales when you were 10, which inspired your love of reading. Now readers understand so much more than the previous vague concept of simply receiving a book. Did you use part of your readings or class discussion to guide you? If you are responding to class readings or previous class discussion, successful responses will use concrete details, quotes, or paraphrasing from the readings. Your responses should analyze the readings in relation to the prompt. Can you find a connection between other readings or class discussions and the prompt? How might you approach these connections in a way that answers the prompt? For example, with the previous prompt asking you for your literacy narrative, it also asks you to make connections with the reading, which might be a Ben Franklin narrative about his literacy experience. Do you see a common ground which you can make connections? Is there something about his story that is similar or opposite to your own literacy narrative? The next thing to consider is what you are responding to, such as your class readings. Unfortunately, many students skim the readings and then struggle with their responses to the prompt. Without taking notes as you go, you may lose track of valuable evidence you could use to support your claim. If you highlight and take notes as you read, you could use this textual evidence in your discussion posts. For example, while reading the Benjamin Franklin piece, if something stands out to you as being similar to your experience, don't just highlight it. Write a quick note about that connection between the reading and your experience. That way, when you get to writing your essay, you'll look back on that note and recall what you were going to say about that connection. Now you may want to take into consideration the class discussion that has been going on about this subject. Sometimes you are permitted to see what others are posting. If so, what are they saying? How can you bring up a new point, see it from a new angle, or extend what is being discussed? For example, if everyone else is discussing literacy when they were children, but your most memorable literacy experience is from teenhood, don't just write about reading a story when you were 7 like everyone else. Suggest that even teens can have valuable literacy experiences and offer yours as an example. This would be a new perspective on literacy and give others a new type of experience to think about. When you are not allowed to see others' discussion posts on the assigned reading, think about what you've read and bring up parts of the reading that need to be clarified. You can also bring up a side of the conversation that the author didn't, or you can try and expand on a theory presented by the readings. If an author focused on how much children learn from teachers, you can qualify that argument by discussing how family members can also influence a child's literacy skills. Let's look at some problematic discussion posts and see what might be a better thread idea. In post number 1, we see a very short post, "I agree with the author," which is too short and vague. Always explain what point you are agreeing with and why you agree. The number 2 thread about Aunt Susan's Caribbean vacation is clearly getting off the topic. Straying from the topic is not always this obvious, but if you ask yourself, what has this answer got to do with the reading, you'll be able to stay on track. In discussion post number 3, the writer here is being vague. What good point did the author make? What is this situation? Also, using textual evidence such as quotes or paraphrasing will help prove the writer's point. As shown in post number 4, always try to extend the conversation. If everyone will likely be talking about one main concept, how can you bring in a new perspective that expands that conversation? Now let's look at a prompt in a successful discussion board thread. Take a few minutes to read this sample prompt and discussion board post by pausing this video. This post clearly responds to the prompt. The prompt has 3 main concepts that the student needed to respond to: a short literacy experience with a connection to both the reading and a social issue. The discussion thread created here offers a clear recollection of the literacy experience and its effects. The post has concrete details, not being vague. The student also makes a connection between the literacy experience, the reading, and a social issue, as the prompt required. In this example of a peer response to a discussion post, the peer responder offered valuable feedback for the thread writer to think about. Namely, the responder complimented what the writer did well, then asked questions about providing concrete detail, such as textual evidence, to demonstrate the connection made between the reading and the literacy experience. This is something to consider when asked to respond to a peer's discussion thread post. Following the suggestions in this presentation may help you improve your discussion board post, substantiating that you've read strategically, carefully considered the prompt, made connections, and moved the overall discussion forward.